think you can just stand there? This is
Why is that girl in this line? Celeste Harrow's voice cut clean and sharp. Did someone's charity project wander into the priority lane? Check her ticket again, before she gets ideas. Nia Johnson, 16, black, deep brown skin, slim, quiet, thrifted hoodie, scuffed sneakers, worn backpack, traveling alone on a scholarship, stopped mid-step with her boarding pass raised. She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She already knew how this scene worked. Any reaction would be turned into proof. Behind the rope stood Celeste Harrow, 38, white, flawless hair, diamonds, cold composure, founder of Harrowlux, a luxury wellness empire partnered with airlines, flanked by 2 polished companions and an assistant. She wasn't angry. She was amused. Cruelty came easy when it wore confidence. Celeste tilted her head toward the gate agent. "You understand," she said pleasantly. "This is a commercial airline, not a soup kitchen. People see a rope and suddenly forget their place." The gate agent straightened instantly. He reached for Nia's pass. "Let me see that." Nia handed it over with 2 fingers, palms open afterward. Empty, visible. The agent scanned it. Beep, normal. He scanned it again, slower, louder, as if the sound itself needed to accuse her. "Step aside," he said. The words carried across the boarding area. Heads turned. A man behind Nia sighed loudly. Someone laughed like this was entertainment. Nia stepped aside because refusing would become non-compliance. Celeste's companions leaned in. "Look at the backpack," one murmured. "She probably thinks the first-class cabin is a museum." The other smiled. "Or she's testing limits. They always do." Nia felt heat rise under her hoodie, but her face stayed neutral. She spoke quietly, only to the agent. "My ticket is valid," Celeste answered for him. "Valid is different from appropriate," she said sweetly. Her eyes traveled over Nia's clothes, her skin, her stillness. "People like you are always trying to slip into spaces you didn't earn." The gate agent cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we're just following airline policy." Celeste nodded approvingly. "Good. Policy protects decent passengers from unpleasant surprises." A few people nodded along. Silence settled, the kind that agrees without speaking. The scanner beeped again, valid again. Still, the agent didn't hand the pass back right away. He turned it over, as if paper might confess. Nia waited. She refused to plead. Pleading was what Celeste wanted. Celeste stepped closer, close enough for her perfume to invade Nia's space. "Don't take it personally," she said, lowering her voice just enough to sound kind. "But when people don't belong, they do unpredictable things." Unpredictable. Dangerous. Everyone heard it. Nia's backpack strap tugged against her shoulder. Inside was a battered pencil pouch labeled in faded marker. Grandma's. Travel protocol. Zip bags. A cheap timer. Laminated cards. A tiny magnifier. It looked like trash if you didn't know. Her grandmother once carried the same tools, until Harrowlux made truth inconvenient. Celeste's eyes flicked down and caught the pouch edge. Her smile widened. "What's that?" she asked loud again. "Your little trash kit? Planning to collect crumbs and call it dinner?" Laughter rippled, soft, relieved, mean. Nia didn't react. She let the moment rot on its own. Finally, the gate agent shoved the boarding pass back. "Go ahead." No apology, no correction, just permission. Nia walked onto the jet bridge, humiliation clinging like static. Celeste and her group followed close enough for their voices to land. "Keep your purse zipped," one companion stage whispered to another passenger. "You never know," Celeste laughed lightly. "It's not about her," she said, still loud enough. "It's about comfort." Inside the aircraft, the lighting changed, warmer near the front, softer, expensive. The boundary was physical, curtain, carpet, tone. A flight attendant's face brightened instantly when Celeste stepped in. "Welcome back, Ms. Harrow." Celeste accepted it like tribute. "Make sure everything is set. I want a smooth flight." Her eyes slid past the attendant to Nia entering behind. No disturbances. The attendant glanced at Nia's seat number, then at Nia's face. An extra beat too long. Your seat is back there, she said sweetly. Let's avoid confusion. I know where it is, Nia replied softly. Celeste moved into the first-class cabin as if crossing into private property. An assistant handed her a Harrow Lux branded amenity pouch. The logo gleamed under the cabin light. Celeste's fingers lingered on it with pride, then she glanced back once more, measuring Nia like a problem she hadn't finished with. Nia reached her economy row and sat. The man beside her shifted his elbow away. Across the aisle, a woman watched Nia's backpack too closely. On the safety screen, cheerful icons played, and a line flashed. Passenger rights. Clean words that felt distant from what had just happened. Up front, Celeste's voice rose again, crisp and controlling. I requested the quietest environment for my baby. I won't be dealing with unpredictable passengers today. The crew moved fast, too fast. Nia stared at the seat back ahead, face calm, pulse steady. She touched the protocol pouch through her bag. Rubbish to them, order to her. Because in a few minutes, the cabin would learn the difference between noise and danger, and the same people who enjoyed humiliating her would soon need her to save what mattered most to them. If you have ever been judged or humiliated just for existing in the wrong place, then what happens next with Nia and Celeste will make you furious and then silent. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay with dignity. Voices to follow what happens next. Because the moment the plane begins to taxi, Celeste's 10-month-old son starts screaming uncontrollably, and Celeste's first instinct is to point at Nia before the real threat reveals itself. The door thudded shut, sealing the cabin in recycled air and expectation. A chime sounded. Seatbelts clicked. The plane began its slow, deliberate push from the gate, an ordinary motion that made the humiliation from boarding feel permanent, like it had been bolted into place. Up front, Celeste Harrow adjusted herself into the first-class cabin, as if the seat owed her loyalty. She didn't soothe her baby. She curated the moment. Evan, 10 months old, sat in her arms, already restless, face flushing, limbs jerking, breath uneven. When his first scream cut through the cabin, it was sharp enough to make heads snap up. Celeste exhaled loudly, annoyed, not worried. He hates disorder, she announced to no one and everyone. He senses chaos. Her eyes drifted back, not subtle, landing on the economy rows like a searchlight. A few passengers followed her gaze. Some nodded, as if they understood the assignment. Evan screamed again, longer this time, a thin, piercing sound that didn't rise and fall like a tantrum. It stuck. A flight attendant hurried forward. Ms. Harrow, can I need quiet, Celeste cut in. I paid for quiet. Handle whatever is triggering him. She didn't say who. She didn't need to. The attendant glanced back toward economy, toward Nia. Nia sat very still, hands folded, eyes forward. She could feel the attention before she saw it, the pressure of being chosen again. Evan's screams didn't sound normal to her. They didn't have rhythm or demand. They had panic in them. Breath fighting breath. But Nia didn't stand yet. She had learned the cost of moving too soon. Celeste did the moving for her. This is exactly what I meant, Celeste said, lifting her voice. Just enough. Unpredictable energy. Babies feel it. If you want a calm environment, you remove the disturbance. Her companions murmured agreement. One leaned into the aisle and stage whispered, It's always someone from the back. A man 2 rows behind Nia scoffed. Can't people just sit where they belong? The flight attendant turned, already aligned. Ma'am, she said to Nia, tone sharpened with authority. Please remain seated. Nia nodded. I am seated. Evan screamed again, higher, more desperate. A few passengers covered their ears. Someone started recording. Celeste noticed and smiled thinly. Documentation could be managed later. I don't want him exposed to this, Celeste said. I don't want my child absorbing instability. Instability. The word slid through the cabin and stuck to Nia like glue. Another attendant appeared, whispering to the first. They both glanced at Nia's bag. The battered pouch, the hoodie, the quiet. Their faces said easy target. Nia's chest tightened. She studied Evan from where she sat, counting breaths the way her grandmother taught her. No watch, no drama. The scream fractured. Evan's face went blotchy, a rash blooming along his neck. His cry thinned, turning wet at the edges. Nia's instincts flared. This wasn't noise. This was danger. She rose slowly, deliberately, hands open. "Excuse me," she said, calm. "He needs to be upright." Celeste whirled. "Sit down." The sweetness vanished. "Do not come near my child." "I'm not touching him," Nia replied. "I'm trying to help." Celeste laughed. Short, cruel. "Help?" She turned to the cabin. "Did you hear that? She thinks she's qualified." Then to the attendants, "Get her back in her seat. This is harassment." The attendants moved in, creating a barrier with their bodies. "Ma'am," one said to Nia, louder now, "this is not your responsibility." Evan screamed again, then choked on the sound. His breath stuttered. Drool thickened at his mouth. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She reached into her backpack slowly and set her battered pouch on the armrest. In plain view, zip bags, laminated cards, a tiny timer. The objects looked ridiculous under cabin lights. Someone snorted. Celeste seized on it. "What is that?" she demanded. "Are you bringing trash into first class now? This is exactly what I was talking about." "It's a protocol," Nia said. "For situations like this." Celeste barked a laugh. "Protocol?" She turned to the crew. "Are we letting random teenagers run medical procedures now? Is that the new airline policy?" A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the cabin. The attendants hesitated, caught between what they were seeing and who they were serving. Nia pointed, not accusing, precise. "He's wheezing. His rash is spreading. When did he eat last?" Celeste froze for half a second. Then fury filled the gap. "How dare you question me?" She pulled Evan closer, rocking him too fast. "You're making it worse." Nia's voice stayed even. "Crying tightens the airway." "Enough," Celeste snapped. "Captain," she called forward, "I am not comfortable with this girl standing in the aisle. I want her documented." Documented. The word landed heavy. The lead attendant nodded, already reaching for a tablet. "Ma'am, please return to your seat," she told Nia. "We'll take it from here." But they didn't take it from anywhere. Evan's scream broke into a silent struggle, mouth open, sound thin, chest pulling hard. The cabin went quiet in the way rooms do when everyone realizes they might be watching something irreversible. Celeste looked down at her son, and finally, fear cracked through the contempt. "Why is he doing that?" she whispered. "Make him stop." Nia stepped closer, despite the attendant's hands hovering. "He's reacting to something," she said. "Food, wipe, lotion, something new." Celeste shook her head. Then her eyes darted to the Harrowlux branded Calm Gummy packet on her tray. The color drained from her face. "No," she said quickly. "That's nothing." Nia didn't argue. She reached for her pouch and placed the cheap timer on the armrest. Click. "We need ground medical now," she said, "and the med kit." Celeste grabbed her arm, not to push her away this time, to beg. Her voice dropped, raw. "Please," she said, "tell me what to do." The attendants froze. The shift was visible, control collapsing, truth pressing in. Nia guided Celeste's hands, keeping Evan upright, stopping the feeding, slowing the panic. She spoke softly, efficiently. No theatrics, no triumph. A man a few rows back stood up. "I'm recording," he said, "for everyone's safety." Another passenger murmured, "This isn't right." The plane no longer felt like Celeste's stage. As the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, medical consultation requested, possible diversion, Celeste looked around the cabin she just commanded. The same people who laughed earlier now watched her with something colder than judgment. Nia stepped back, giving space, eyes still on Evan's breathing. Her pouch sat open, its rubbish suddenly the most organized thing in the room, because the noise that lied, the noise Celeste blamed on Nia, had finally told the truth, and the truth was about to get very expensive. The word diversion didn't come over the intercom at first. It crept through the cabin on posture alone, through the way the lead attendant stiffened, through the way a headset stayed pressed to her ear longer than necessary, through the sudden seriousness of voices that had been patronizing minutes earlier. Evan's breathing had slowed, but it wasn't normal. Each inhale scraped, shallow and uneven, like it had to. Push through resistance. Nia stood half a step back, hands still, eyes locked on the rise and fall of his chest. She didn't touch. She counted. Celeste held her son too tightly, rocking him in quick, panicked motions. The momentary pleading she'd shown before hardened into something colder. Fear didn't make her gentle. It made her dangerous. "Why is she still here?" Celeste demanded, lifting her head toward the crew. "I asked for her to be documented. She interfered." The lead attendant hesitated. That pause mattered. "Ms. Harrow, we're coordinating with ground medical." "Then coordinate without her," Celeste snapped. "This is inappropriate." Nia spoke calmly, not to Celeste, but to the space between them. "Please note the time," she said, "and who declined the med kit earlier." A ripple passed through the nearby rows. Phones tilted higher. A man a few seats back, quiet until now, leaned forward. "For clarity," he said evenly, "are we treating this as a medical incident or a passenger conduct issue?" The lead attendant swallowed. "Medical." "Then preservation applies," the man replied, "including documentation." Celeste's eyes flashed. "This isn't a crime scene," she said sharply. "This is a baby who got upset." Nia reached into her pouch and placed 2 sealed zip bags on the armrest between the seats. Inside were the Harrowlux branded gummy wrapper and a wipe packet. She wrote the time on a laminated card and slid it beside them. Her movements were slow, deliberate, unmistakably practiced. Celeste stared at the bags like they were an accusation. "Get that away from my child," she said. "You're contaminating the area." "They were already here," Nia replied. "I'm preserving them." "For what?" Celeste demanded. "For accuracy." The word hung there. Celeste turned to the lead attendant, voice smoothing into corporate calm. "Are we allowing a teenager to accuse my company of wrongdoing in this cabin?" The lead attendant opened her mouth, then closed it again. The man in the aisle raised his phone slightly. "Statements are being recorded," he said, "for everyone's protection." Celeste snapped, "Turn that off." "I can't," he replied. "I won't." Nia kept her eyes on Evan. The rash had stopped spreading, but the wheeze persisted. She placed the cheap kitchen timer from her pouch on the armrest and started it. Click. The sound was small, but it focused the room. "We need ground medical now," Nia said. "And the medkit." Celeste's voice cracked as she looked down at her son. "Why isn't he stopping?" she whispered. Then, louder, "Do something!" The captain's voice came over the intercom, controlled and calm. "Cabin crew, confirm medical consult. Prepare for possible diversion." A collective inhale swept the cabin. Celeste straightened instantly. "If you divert," she said, "I will hold this airline responsible. We followed your amenities, your products, your guidelines." "That statement is on record," the man said quietly. Celeste turned on him. "Who do you think you are?" "Someone who understands legal accountability," he replied. Silence followed. Not empty silence, loaded silence. Nia added another note to her card. Item location prior to collection. She slid the card into her pouch without ceremony. Celeste leaned closer to Nia, lowering her voice. "You want attention," she said. "I can make this disappear. Scholarships disappear. Records disappear." Nia didn't look at her. "Please step back," she said evenly. "You're increasing his distress." That was the moment the room shifted. Not because of what Celeste said, but because of how calmly Nia refused to be moved by it. The lead attendant finally spoke, voice shaking but firm. "Ms. Harrow, I'm documenting everything." Celeste stared at her. "Excuse me?" "Times, requests, items, refusals," the attendant said. "We're required to." Required. The word landed hard. Nia closed her pouch and placed it back into her bag, as if sealing something irreversible. She didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She just returned her attention to Evan's breathing. The captain spoke again. "We will be diverting to the nearest suitable airport. Medical teams will meet us on arrival." Some passengers exhaled. Others stared ahead, pale and silent. Celeste slumped back, fury simmering under control. She whispered to her assistant, "This is going to cost us." The man replied without looking up, "Only if there's corporate negligence." Celeste shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Watch yourself." "I am," he said. As the plane began its descent, the crew moved with a new seriousness. Reports were typed carefully. Times were checked. No one touched the sealed bags. Nia felt the shift in gravity as the aircraft turned. She glanced once at Celeste, not with triumph, not with anger, but with clarity. "This isn't personal anymore," Nia said quietly. "It's permanent." Celeste looked away. When the wheels finally touched the runway, no one clapped. The cabin sat in heavy silence, aware that something irreversible had just been recorded. And in that silence, truth did what it always does once it's written down. It stopped being a story and became a record. If you've ever seen power try to erase the truth in real time, stay with us. Like, subscribe, and follow Dignity Voices, because what comes next turns one incident into a reckoning. Because the moment the doors open and authorities board the plane, Celeste doesn't apologize. She counterattacks, and takes this from crisis to courtroom. The aircraft rolled to a stop with a long, reluctant sigh. Engines wound down. The cabin lights brightened to a clinical white that made faces look older, truer. No one clapped. No one reached for bags. Everyone waited, because waiting had become the safest posture. "Remain seated," the captain said over the intercom, calm but unmistakably firm. "Authorities will be boarding." The words snapped the cabin into two camps, those who felt protected by the phrase and those who felt indicted by it. The forward door opened. Cool air rushed in, carrying the sound of the terminal beyond. Voices, carts, a normal world intruding on a suspended one. Two paramedics stepped aboard first, brisk and focused, followed by an airport supervisor and a uniformed officer. Their presence changed the math instantly. The aisle that had been a stage for power became a corridor of process. Celeste straightened, mask on. The grief-softened mother vanished. The executive returned. She rose halfway from her seat, already speaking. "Thank God you're here. My child was harassed by a passenger who interfered with care and caused a scene. I need this handled discreetly." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, we'll speak with everyone." Celeste's smile tightened. "Of course. I'm just concerned about accountability." Nia remained seated, hands folded, eyes tracking Evan as the paramedics assessed him. Oxygen, gentle questions, calm movements. The baby whimpered, exhausted, then settled into a fragile rhythm that told its own story. One paramedic nodded. "We're taking him off first," Celeste bristled. "I'm coming with him." "You will," the paramedic said, "after we secure the aisle." As Evan was lifted carefully, the cabin leaned in as one body, fear braided with relief. The officer turned to the crew. "Who initiated the medical call?" The lead attendant answered, voice steadier than before. "I did, after ground medical consultation." "And before that?" the officer asked. A pause. The wrong pause. Celeste filled it. "Before that, we had interference. From her," she pointed. Clean, precise, at Nia. "She stood in the aisle. She handled items. She caused distress. I want her documented. Phones rose again. Nia spoke without standing. I asked for ground medical. I preserved items already present. I didn't touch the child. The officer glanced between them. Items? Nia nodded once and opened her backpack. She didn't rummage. She produced the pouch, placed it on her lap, and set 2 sealed zip bags on the armrest, still labeled, still timed. The laminated card slid out with neat handwriting. Times, locations, refusals. Celeste laughed, brittle. This is absurd. Are we accepting evidence from a teenager now? The airport supervisor leaned closer to read the labels. These are sealed, she said. Who instructed disposal? No one answered. The lead attendant inhaled. No one did, she said. I was told to contain the situation. Celeste's head snapped toward her. I said document the interference. The supervisor looked up. Ma'am, documentation includes refusals and items involved. Celeste recalibrated instantly. Then document this. My company supplies wellness amenities to this airline. If something went wrong, it's on the vendor chain, not a passenger. A murmur rippled. The words vendor chain carried weight. The officer nodded slowly. Then we'll need statements. Celeste's assistant leaned in, whispering urgently. Celeste waved her off and raised her voice. I expect discretion. This is a family matter. The compliance attorney, no longer hiding, stepped into the aisle and identified himself. It became a public safety matter when requests for medical escalation were delayed. Celeste's eyes flashed. You're out of line. He smiled thinly. I'm on record. The officer addressed the cabin. If you recorded video or audio, please retain it. Do not delete. Celeste stiffened. That's, unnecessary. The officer didn't look at her. It's procedure. As paramedics moved Evan toward the door, Celeste tried one last pivot. She turned to Nia, voice low, controlled, meant to sound compassionate. You've done enough. Let professionals handle it. There's no need to escalate. Nia met her gaze. I asked for professionals. That was it. No accusation, no sermon, just the hinge of truth. The airport supervisor turned to the crew. We'll need the incident report, unedited. The lead attendant nodded. I've saved it. Celeste's composure cracked. Saved? You were supposed to finalize. I did, the attendant said. With times. A beat, then another. Celeste exhaled sharply and looked around the cabin. The witnesses, the phones, the sealed bags. Her tone hardened. This airline will regret letting this spiral. The officer finally faced her fully. Ma'am, threatening statements won't help. Threatening? Celeste scoffed. I'm stating reality. The supervisor gestured toward the door. We'll speak on the jet bridge. As they stood, Celeste leaned toward Nia one last time, voice like ice. You think this makes you brave? It makes you visible. Nia didn't respond. Visibility had already chosen her. On the jet bridge, the temperature dropped. Paramedics moved fast. Evan was handed off. Celeste followed, barking instructions into her phone. Pull the partnership language. Lock down statements. I want legal on this now. The compliance attorney recorded the call. Behind them, the officer began separating witnesses. Names, seats, statements. The cabin transformed into a map of accountability. Nia gave her statement clearly, briefly. No adjectives, no emotions, times, actions, requests. She handed over the sealed bags and the card. The supervisor accepted them carefully. You did right preserving this. Nia nodded. That was all. Celeste paced, phone pressed to her ear. This will be framed as a passenger incident, she said. We won't allow a narrative of... She stopped when she saw the officer watching. Of confusion. The officer ended her call with a raised palm. Ma'am, we need you now. Celeste's jaw set. She complied. Because cameras were everywhere. Inside the terminal, the plane sat quiet, doors open, emptied of bravado. The crew stood in a line, answering questions. The lead attendant caught Nia's eye and nodded once, an apology without words. As the last witness finished, the supervisor addressed the remaining passengers. "You're free to continue your journeys. Thank you for your patience." People gathered their bags slowly, subdued. A woman who had laughed earlier avoided Nia's gaze. A man murmured, "You did good," then looked embarrassed and walked on. Nia stepped into the terminal air. The noise returned. Rolling suitcases, overhead announcements, the churn of travel. It felt unreal after the pressure of the cabin. Across the corridor, Celeste stood with legal counsel now, face composed again, voice clipped. She caught Nia looking and offered a thin smile that promised retaliation. Nia didn't look away. She didn't smile back. Because what Celeste had just done, counterattacking in front of witnesses, attempting to shape records, invoking power instead of care, had moved this beyond a single flight. It wasn't just about a baby anymore. It was about who controls the record when something goes wrong, and who pays when the record doesn't bend. As Nia walked toward her connecting gate, her phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. "Preserve everything. They're circling." She slipped the phone into her pocket and kept walking. The doors had opened. So had something else. Celeste didn't leave the terminal. She commandeered it. Within minutes of Evan being wheeled away, her world snapped into formation. Assistants arriving from nowhere, a lawyer stepping out of an elevator with a rolling briefcase, a publicist already drafting language on a phone held low and tight. Celeste stood at the center, posture flawless, voice clipped, issuing instructions like she was back in a boardroom instead of an airport corridor that still smelled faintly of jet fuel and antiseptic. "Lock statements," she said. "No one speaks without clearance. Not the crew, not the airline, not the hospital." She paused, listening, then added, "And find out who that girl is." Across the terminal, Nia sat alone near a window, backpack at her feet. She hadn't moved since giving her statement. Movement felt like permission. Permission for the story to keep changing without her. She watched planes taxi, the slow choreography of departure and return, and tried to slow her breathing the way her grandmother taught her. Count the seconds you can control. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. They're contacting witnesses. Don't delete anything. Nia typed a single word back. Saved. Celeste's publicist cleared her throat. "We need to get ahead of this before it metastasizes. The narrative is simple. A distressed infant, a well-meaning but unqualified passenger, and a crew doing their best under pressure." Celeste nodded. "And make sure the language emphasizes safety. Concerned mother. Overzealous bystander. Nothing accusatory. Just firm." Her lawyer leaned in. "There's video." "There's always video," Celeste replied coolly. "We don't fight video, we reframe it." She glanced toward the seating area where Nia sat. "And if the airline needs a scapegoat, better her than us." At the gate, the crew gathered in a tight knot. The lead attendant stared at her tablet, replaying the timeline over and over. She'd documented everything. Times, refusals, the moment Celeste tried to redirect blame. But doubt crept in anyway. Airlines were good at soft erasures. A word changed here. A tone adjusted there. Suddenly, truth sounded like opinion. A supervisor approached. "Legal wants a call." The attendant swallowed. "About the report?" "Yes, they want to review it." The word review made her stomach drop. Across the terminal, a man who had recorded from row 14 typed furiously, uploading backups to cloud storage. Another passenger, a nurse, declined a call from an unknown number and took a screenshot instead. The witness loop tightened, quietly, invisibly, like a net being pulled closed. Celeste's phone rang again. She stepped away, lowering her voice. "No," she said sharply. "Do not say allergic reaction. Say suspected sensitivity. And remove the product name. We'll handle the vendor language internally." She ended the call and turned to her lawyer. "If the airline drags this into their compliance sandbox, we remind them who pays for those amenities." Her lawyer hesitated. There's a risk in applying pressure. Celeste smiled thinly. Pressure is how systems remember what side they're on. Nia watched a child toddle past with a balloon, oblivious to everything. She felt suddenly very young, 16 with a backpack and a phone full of screenshots, then remembered the pouch in her bag, the sealed zip bags, the laminated card, the times. She touched the bag gently, like it might reassure her back. A woman sat down beside her, mid-40s, sensible coat, kind eyes. "I was on your flight," she said softly. "I saw what happened." Nia nodded, unsure what to say. "I'm a pediatric nurse," the woman continued. "You did exactly what I would have done." Nia's throat tightened. "Thank you." The woman leaned closer. "They called me, too, asked me to clarify what I saw." "And?" Nia asked. "I clarified," the woman said, smiling. "In writing." Celeste's publicist returned, phone glowing. "We've drafted a holding statement. We'll emphasize empathy and privacy. No admissions, no specifics." Celeste read it quickly. Add a line about misinformation spreading online, and another about cooperating fully with authorities. "Authorities?" the publicist echoed. Celeste's eyes hardened. "It sounds responsible." A junior assistant hurried up, pale. "Ma'am, there's chatter. Someone tagged the airline and Harrow Lux together." Celeste exhaled through her nose. "Of course they did!" She turned back toward Nia's direction, watching the girl sit quietly, doing nothing, and somehow becoming the axis around which everything now turned. "She thinks silence protects her," Celeste murmured. "It doesn't." The lawyer leaned in. "We can send a cease and desist. Preemptive. It discourages escalation." "Do it," Celeste said, "and reach out to the school. Scholarships have committees. Committees love peace." At the same moment, Nia's phone buzzed again, this time with a subject line that made her chest tighten. Notice of potential defamation. She opened it, read it once, then closed it. Her hands shook. She hated that. Hated how quickly power could reach across space and squeeze. She stood up. Not to confront Celeste, not to make a scene. She walked to the customer service desk and asked, politely, clearly, for the airline's incident reference number. She wrote it down. She asked for the procedure to submit supplemental materials. She wrote that down too. The agent hesitated, then slid a card across the counter. "You didn't hear this from me," she said quietly. "But send everything, tonight." Nia nodded. "Thank you." Celeste watched the exchange from across the terminal, irritation flaring. "She's moving," she said. "Let her," the lawyer replied. "We're faster." But speed wasn't the only currency anymore. A notification pinged across Celeste's phone, an internal alert from a partner airline's compliance team requesting a briefing. Another followed from a retailer asking about a possible recall scenario. The machine she'd built to amplify comfort and control was beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Celeste straightened. "We don't concede," she said. "We contain." She stepped into a quiet room with glass walls and made one last call. "I want background," she said. "Family, school, anything that reframes her credibility." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Ma'am, that could backfire." Celeste smiled without humor. "Everything backfires if you let it." Back at the window, Nia sent a final message to the unknown number that had been warning her all afternoon. "I have everything. Where do I send it?" The reply came instantly. "We'll come to you." Nia closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. The counterattack had arrived exactly as her grandmother said it would, loud, confident, convinced it could scare truth back into hiding. But this time, the record already existed. And once a record exists, power doesn't erase it. It only exposes itself trying. If you've ever seen power try to silence the truth instead of facing it, stay with us. Subscribe and follow Dignity Voices, because the pressure is rising. Because Celeste's counterattack doesn't just target Nia, it pulls the airline itself into the fight and cracks the system from the inside. The call came before dawn. Nia was half awake in the plastic chair outside her connecting gate, hoodie pulled tight, backpack hugged to her knees. Airports at that hour felt like confessions. Too quiet, too honest. Her phone vibrated once, then again, then settled into a steady pulse like it was afraid to stop. "This is Special Investigations," a woman said when Nia answered. Her voice was calm, practiced, unmistakably official. "We're with the airline's compliance unit. We need to speak with you in person." Nia closed her eyes. "I'm still in the terminal." "We know," the woman replied. "Please remain where you are." Across the airport, Celeste was already moving. She'd slept for 20 minutes in a private lounge chair, woken by the vibration of 3 phones at once. Her lawyer spoke first, fast and clipped. The airline opened an internal review. Compliance, safety, documentation. They're interviewing crew. Celeste sat up, anger sharpening her focus. "On whose authority?" "On theirs," he said. "They're worried about exposure." "Exposure to what?" Celeste snapped. He hesitated. "To the appearance of pressure." Celeste stood, smoothing her blazer. "Then we remove the appearance." She dialed a familiar number, an executive who owed her favors. "I need this contained," she said. "The narrative is drifting." The executive sighed. "Celeste, compliance doesn't drift. It follows paper. Paper can be edited," she replied. "Not when multiple versions exist," he said, "and not when outside witnesses are involved." The line went dead. At Nia's gate, 2 airline representatives approached, one middle-aged woman with a compliance badge clipped to her blazer, one man with a tablet held like a shield. They introduced themselves, asked permission to sit, and then, critically, asked if Nia wanted a witness present. "Yes," Nia said. "I'd like one." They nodded, as if they expected that answer. The woman began. "We're reviewing the handling of a medical incident. Specifically, the timeline between first symptoms and escalation." Nia opened her backpack and placed the pouch on the table. She unzipped it slowly. Out came the laminated card, the timer, the sealed bags. She laid them out in order, the way her grandmother taught her, facts before feelings. "These are the times," Nia said. "These are the refusals. This is when I requested ground medical." The man with the tablet stopped typing. "You documented refusals?" "Yes," Nia said, "because delays can matter." The compliance woman's mouth tightened. "Who told you to do that?" "My grandmother," Nia replied, before she was told to stop. They exchanged a glance. Across the terminal, Celeste's assistant intercepted a crew member on her way to a shuttle. "Legal needs you," she said softly. "Just to clarify a few things." The attendant's shoulders slumped. "I already gave my statement." "Of course," the assistant said. "This is just polish." The attendant shook her head. "I won't change it." The assistant smiled, thin. "No one asked you to." But that wasn't true. Within the hour, 3 versions of the incident report existed, each subtly different. One minimized the delay, one reframed the initial response as immediate, one omitted the moment Celeste redirected blame. The differences were small enough to look accidental. Together they told a story. Compliance noticed. "Why are there discrepancies?" the compliance woman asked Nia, not accusing, checking. "Because someone is scared," Nia said, "and scared people try to smooth edges." The compliance woman nodded once. "That aligns with what we're seeing." She tapped her badge. "We're escalating this to an independent audit." The words landed with weight. Celeste learned about the audit in a glass-walled conference room while a hospital liaison updated her on Evan's condition. Stable, monitored, improving. Relief flickered, then vanished beneath fury. "Independent?" Celeste repeated. "Since when?" "Since there were multiple attempts to influence reporting," the liaison said carefully. Celeste laughed, short and sharp. Influence? I advocated. You contacted staff directly, the liaison replied. That's influence. Celeste's phone buzzed. Again, an alert from a retailer partner requesting guidance on potential safety communications. Another from a board member. We need a briefing. Her empire, so accustomed to smoothing friction, was suddenly encountering it everywhere. Back at the gate, Nia's witness arrived. A quiet woman with a recorder and a badge that didn't flash authority so much as patience. She listened as Nia repeated the timeline, asked clarifying questions, and then asked one thing that mattered most. Did anyone instruct you to discard items? Yes, Nia said, indirectly. Who? Nia named names, carefully, without embellishment. The recorder clicked off. Thank you, the woman said. That's enough for now. Enough for today. Celeste tried another call, this one to a friendly columnist. I want to contextualize, she said. There's misinformation. The columnist sighed. Celeste, the problem with context is evidence. People have it. Celeste slammed her phone onto the table. The glass didn't crack, but something else did. At noon, the airline issued a quiet internal memo. Preserve all materials related to Flight 4117. Do not alter records. Direct all inquiries to compliance. The memo traveled fast. Crew members forwarded it to each other. Screenshots appeared. A system designed to protect brand image pivoted, clumsily, toward protecting itself. Nia felt the shift before she understood it. The compliance woman returned with a printed acknowledgement. Your supplemental materials have been logged, she said. You'll receive confirmation. Thank you, Nia replied. The woman hesitated. You did the right thing. Nia nodded. Praise felt dangerous. She preferred proof. Celeste's lawyer arrived with fresh instructions. We pause outreach, he said. No more calls, no more pressure. Celeste stared at him. You're telling me to do nothing? I'm telling you to stop making it. Worse. She looked out through the glass wall at the terminal beyond, at ordinary people moving through ordinary spaces, unaware that a system was adjusting itself around a single documented moment. Systems don't adjust, Celeste said quietly. They get pushed. Yes, the lawyer replied. And they push back. By evening, whispers reached the gate. A compliance audit, a product safety review, questions about amenity sourcing, questions about influence. None of it loud yet. None of it public, but real. Nia stood and shouldered her backpack. She felt lighter, not because the fight was over, but because it had changed shape. It wasn't her against Celeste anymore. It was process against pressure. Her phone buzzed one last time that day. They opened the file. You're protected. Nia typed back. For now. She walked toward her next gate, past shops and screens and the soft churn of travel. Behind her, somewhere in a glass room, Celeste stared at a system she could no longer command with a smile. The crack had formed, and once a system cracks, it doesn't heal by pretending nothing happened. It heals by choosing sides. The first version of the clip was only 12 seconds long. No context, no captions, just a shaky frame from row 14 angled down the aisle, a crying baby in first class, a woman's voice sharp and commanding, and a black teenage girl standing perfectly still while adults spoke about her like she wasn't there. It should have died there, another forgettable fragment in the endless scroll. It didn't. By the time Nia's connecting flight began boarding, the clip had been reposted with a caption that changed everything. Why did they single out the girl in the hoodie instead of helping the baby? That question spread faster than outrage ever did. Nia didn't know any of this yet. She was still in the airport, still answering careful calls, still doing what she'd been trained to do. Preserve, not perform. She turned her phone face down during boarding and didn't look at it again until she felt the plane lift. When she finally did, the screen was lit with numbers she didn't recognize. Notifications stacked on notifications, missed calls, messages from classmates she barely spoke to, from teachers, from people she didn't know at all. Is this you? "You okay? That woman is evil. I saw everything." The clip had grown teeth. Someone added a second angle, clearer audio this time. Celeste's voice cut through, unmistakable, dismissive. "People like you are unpredictable." The words landed hard without slurs, without exaggeration, because the cruelty didn't need help. A third post followed with timestamps and subtitles. A fourth stitched the moment Nia asked for ground medical, to the moment a flight attendant told her to sit down. A fifth slowed the frame and circled Evan's rash as it spread, contrasting it with the crew's delay. By nightfall, the story wasn't about a crying baby. It was about priority. On the ground, Celeste watched the numbers climb in real time. Her publicist paced the hotel suite like a trapped animal. "It's not stopping," she said. The hashtag jumped platforms. "They're calling it a case study." "A case study?" Celeste snapped. "Yes," the publicist replied. "Discrimination, power dynamics, medical delay. They're tagging regulators." Celeste scrolled, jaw tight. The comments weren't what she expected. There was no mob demanding blood. There was something worse. Analysis. Calm, devastating breakdowns. Lawyers explaining duty of care. Doctors pointing out the signs of allergic reaction. Flight attendants from other airlines saying, "We're trained to escalate faster than this." And threaded through all of it, why did they target the girl instead of the problem? Celeste's phone rang again, this time a board member. She answered on the second ring. "We need to talk," the voice said. "Now." Celeste closed her eyes. "We're handling it." "No," the voice replied. "You're amplifying it." At the airline's headquarters, a crisis room filled quietly. No shouting, no panic. Screens displayed clips, timelines, policy excerpts. The compliance team watched the same 12 seconds loop again and again, not for outrage, but for exposure. "Notice the alignment," one analyst said. "The accusation precedes the assessment. And the documentation delay," another added. "Public sees that." The head of compliance folded her hands. "We don't fight this. We correct it." Across town, a journalist who'd covered aviation safety for years posted a long thread. Measured. Precise. "Here's why this matters." It didn't mention Celeste by name. It didn't need to. It mapped the incident to patterns, VIP pressure, crew deference, misapplied policy. The clip escaped not because it was shocking, but because it was legible. Nia landed an hour later to a phone that wouldn't stop vibrating. She sat in her seat long after the seatbelt sign turned off, heart pounding, the cabin noise rushing back in. When she finally stood, a flight attendant caught her eye, not from her earlier flight, but someone else entirely, and gave her a small nod. Respect, not pity. At the gate, two people approached her carefully, like they didn't want to scare her. One was a reporter. The other held a badge that said Civil Rights Review. "We won't record you," the badge holder said. "We just want to make sure you're okay, and that you know you don't have to do this alone." Nia nodded slowly. "I know." Her phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. This one short and blunt. "Stand by. Statement incoming." Celeste's statement dropped 20 minutes later. It was polished, empathetic, bloodless. "We regret any distress caused. We are reviewing our processes. We value inclusion." The publicist exhaled. "It's clean." It lasted 9 minutes. Then someone posted a screenshot of an internal email, timestamped during the incident, requesting staff to control the passenger narrative. Another clip surfaced of Celeste whispering about records disappearing. The statement collapsed under the weight of contradiction. At the airline, the CEO made a decision that would change careers. "We go transparent," she said. "All of it." Phones lit up again, this time with official notices. Preservation orders, audit confirmations. A civil rights inquiry announced without fanfare. The clip kept moving, not as spectacle, but as evidence. Nia watched from her dorm room that night, knees pulled to her chest, backpack on the floor. She hadn't posted, hadn't commented, hadn't even liked anything. She felt strange, hollow, and full at the same time. Her grandmother called. "I saw it," she said softly. Nia closed her eyes. "I didn't want it to go like this." Her grandmother paused. Truth never asks permission. Down the street from Celeste's hotel, protesters gathered, not shouting, not angry. They held signs with questions instead of slogans. Why her? Who gets believed? Who gets protected? Celeste stood at the window, lights of the city reflected in the glass, watching a world she'd curated turn unreadable. Her phone rang again, legal this time. "They've expanded the scope," the lawyer said. "The airline, your partnerships, the products." Celeste said nothing. Across the city, Nia's phone buzzed one last time before sleep claimed her. Tomorrow gets louder. Rest. She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling, breathing steady. The clip had escaped. And once it did, the story no longer belonged to the people who tried to control it. It belonged to everyone who recognized the pattern and decided not to look away. The noise didn't end with a bang. It ended with paperwork. Weeks after the diverted flight, the conference room smelled like fresh paint and caution. No cameras, no applause, just a long table, too many binders, and people who had learned, too late, that silence doesn't erase records. The settlement agreement was thinner than Celeste expected. Precise language, narrow denials, broad responsibility. The airline's counsel slid it forward without ceremony. It didn't say guilt. It didn't say innocence. It said changes effective immediately. Celeste read every line twice. Her name appeared nowhere in bold. That hurt more than accusation. Across the table, the airline's CEO spoke carefully. "We are issuing an executive apology, not because the internet demands it, but because our systems failed under pressure. We failed to protect a child and failed to protect a passenger from discrimination." Celeste stiffened. The word discrimination still burned. The CEO continued. "This is not reputation management. This is correction." She tapped a page. Revised escalation protocols, mandatory bias interruption training, independent audits of onboard medical response, and full separation between vendor influence and crew decision-making. Brand accountability, printed cleanly in the appendix, meant something different now. It meant Celeste's products would be reviewed by people who didn't owe her anything. It meant partnerships paused, then restructured, then reopened only under conditions she could not negotiate away. Celeste signed. Her pen felt heavier than it ever had. In another room, Nia sat with her grandmother and a pro bono attorney. No grand speeches, no victory smiles. The agreement protected Nia's records, cleared her name formally, and funded a small but permanent program. Independent incident documentation kits placed on flights, credited quietly to Passenger Safety Initiative. No plaques, no branding. When it was over, Nia stepped outside into ordinary daylight. Cars passed. People hurried. The world had not rearranged itself for her. That felt right. Across town, Celeste watched the apology stream without sound. She recognized the woman on the screen, the practiced cadence, the careful phrasing. But she didn't recognize the outcome. Control had slipped through her fingers, not because someone fought louder, but because someone stayed exact. Nia didn't attend the press conference. She didn't need to. She walked past an airport later that week and noticed a new sign near the gate desk. Medical concerns escalate immediately. Documentation preserved, respect required. It wasn't poetic. It was enough. She adjusted her backpack, felt the familiar weight of the battered pouch inside, and kept walking. Not because the story had ended, but because it no longer needed her to stand still. Nia's strength was never volume. It was restraint. She didn't win by dominating a room. She won by refusing to be displaced from truth. Her discipline, documenting, timing, preserving, turned vulnerability into structure. Nia represents a kind of courage we rarely celebrate. The courage to remain precise when provoked, to stay human when dehumanized. Celeste, by contrast, didn't start as a villain in her own mind. She believed power was protection. That influence equaled safety. Her failure wasn't malice alone. It was entitlement, unchecked by accountability. When systems bent for her, she mistook that bending for righteousness. Her downfall came not from exposure alone, but from repetition, doing what had always worked, one time too many, in front of witnesses who didn't look away. This story isn't about a plane. It's about what happens when bias meets procedure, and procedure collapses. It asks us to reflect on a simple question. Who do we listen to first when something goes wrong? The loudest voice? The most powerful name? Or the person calmly pointing at the facts? Change doesn't always arrive as outrage. Sometimes it arrives as a checklist, a timestamp, a refusal to discard evidence. When we protect truth at the smallest moments, we protect dignity at the largest. In daily life, we may never face a viral moment or a boardroom reckoning, but we all face choices: to stay silent or to speak carefully, to assume or to observe, to protect comfort or to protect fairness. Like Nia, we can learn that preparation is not paranoia, and that quiet integrity often outlasts loud authority. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you reflect on how we treat one another, especially when power enters the room, stay with us, like, subscribe, and join Dignity Voices for stories that center truth, accountability, and quiet courage. Because a healthier, safer, happier world doesn't start with shouting. It starts with people who refuse to look away.